We all have a story to tell, but what makes each one different is not how the story ends, but rather the place where it begins.
I think that every film you make is personal in the sense that whether it's direct or not, experience of your own, of other people's behavior, your own behavior, informs the authenticity of it or the credibility of it.
Bunny!
Doing work that involves autobiography forces you to be more rigorous. It keeps you honest because you can't indulge, in fact. You have to make sure it means something to other people.
I think my dad wants us to leave Belfast.
We filmed in small rooms or outside. The windows were always open. Much smaller crew numbers, so myself and Harris, the DP and operator, and the focus puller would be alone with the actors as we waited for natural light to do one thing or another. We did not rehearse. We would often just say, right, we would just go for it. We won't even say it once. We're not even going to tell anybody. We're not going to let our crew know what they're saying. We're just, especially if two people were sitting there, and say, well, they're going to talk, and we're going to use natural light, so action. I'd say that I wish all audiences to see all films in cinemas with the best sound and the best picture, but with Belfast, I think inevitably there's a greater degree of immersion in the fun, in the joy, and sometimes the sorrow of this 9-year-old's view of how his life is changing and how, alas, for many people in the northern part of that island, it's also changing. The thrills and chills of it all are enhanced when you come into Dolby Cinema. It's a complete experience. It is so painterly in the way that black is presented through Dolby Vision that it feels as though you are looking at a frame as if it were a portrait in a Renaissance museum by a Renaissance master. And that is all about Dolby and the blacks. It's a silky, liquid, velvety quality that has a really extraordinary effect and magic. Part of what this process does, it comes out and grabs the viewer, and so it involves you. It's a process that invites the audience to have a greater involvement with the images and with the emotion behind it. A simple static shot of, albeit a very beautiful woman, is as much about the depth of the background as it is about her beauty and a lovely framing from Harris. That was one example of simply what this process does that took my breath away when I saw it. And that colour punch at the end has been much commented upon by those who've seen it as being a very effective way of tying a contemporary audience's experience to the story they've just seen of a family in 1969.
We're living in a civil war. This is the time to make a new start.
One of the things that I wanted to constantly remind audiences of in Belfast was that the atmosphere of the city and its violence and its unpredictability was constantly escalating. So we wanted the noise and the sound and the vision of what was going on to increase in presence. And so the necessity to make that sound as vivid in our sound landscape was critical. And you needed a system that allowed for as much detail and variety as possible, that could also chart how the intensity rose and, frankly, life changed.
We'll fight this together.
There's absolutely no question that Atmos intensifies, for instance, in Belfast, the sense that the street, this neighbourhood, is being encircled by threat, in the same way as it's literally being sort of wrapped in barbed wire and protected by a barricade. There's also a sound barrier that is being created around the neighbourhood, and making that very detailed across all that range of sound. This sense of an intensification of the city in crisis is something that Atmos was able to bring to this picture, which is sort of really irreplaceable.
I want my family with me. I want you.
When wrapped in the Dolby Cinema cocoon, I think that you inevitably lean forward. There's an immersion quality. There's a sense of sort of diving into the pictorial elements of the films and the audio element of the films. It becomes a complete experience. We've been lucky to work on things where story and screenplay are good, and if that's the case, then the imaginations of the audience take over. And if you can support that vivid imagination with a fantastic technical process that is invisible but brilliant, then it's a great experience. It's a beautiful thing to be part of. And in Belfast, I think it takes you to that place and takes you on that young man's journey with even greater personal involvement.
Go now. Don't look back.